It's like 7 and TFT. Say that starts at 9. Yeah. I'm ready. You guys are ready. You're live to stand most of it. Right there.
Right, exactly.
Good afternoon, Vietnam. No, sorry, wrong deal. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Douglas A. Welton, and I am the chairman of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. I'd like to welcome you to our December 9th, 2024 Planning Commission work session. The Planning Commission work session is held at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Government Center at 600 East 4th Street. We are in room 267 today. These are public meetings, and we invite you to come join us in person if you'd like. For viewing by the public, though, and the media, today's meeting is being streamed live on the Planning, Design, and Development Department's YouTube page. So there's that, just in case you need some late night viewing. Thank you very much. We're going to get our meeting started. We apologize for being a little bit late today, but we had a fun adventure prior to this meeting. We will begin with doing introductions, and we will begin all the way to the right with Commissioner Stewart.
Robin Stewart, Planning Commission.
Terry Lansdale, Planning Commission.
Teresa McDonald, Planning Commission.
Shauna Neely, Planning Commission. Rebecca Wilden, Planning Commission.
Michael Caprioli, Planning Commission.
Andrew Blumenthal, Planning Commission.
Erin Shaw, Planning Commission.
Carolyn Millen, Planning Commission. Melissa Gaston, Planning Commission.
Rick Winiker, Planning Commission.
Thank you very much, everyone. Now we will, everybody swallow. That's it. We're all having a little bit of lunch here. We will also do introductions of staff, and we will begin all the way to my left with Monica.
Monica Holmes, Deputy Planning Director.
Allison Craig, Planning Director.
Candace Rory, Planning Staff.
Al Knight, Planning Staff.
Thanks, everyone. And we're excited about today's meeting. We are going to have some fun things on our agenda. We are going to talk a little bit very shortly here about the CLT Development Center. And also we have CRTPO folks here to talk to us about all of the things regional transport and planning for our area. So before we do that, we need to take care of our minutes from previous meetings. And I'd like to entertain a motion for the disposition of the minutes from our previous meeting.
Motion.
It's been moved by Commissioner Shaw and seconded by Commissioner Seeley. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Thanks very much. And we will pick up, everyone, with our, prior to this meeting, there was a tour of the CLT Development Center. And the commissioners were able to take that tour. We were given an introduction to all of the different components of the spaceship. I think that was the way it was described by Nan Peterson and also Shannon Fry. And so Nan, do you have a little bit of more presentation, or do you just want to take questions?
No, just real briefly, I just wanted to go through the process to see how we're interconnected, especially with the county. You heard a lot of that at the agency saying that they're reviewing both ways.
Yeah.
And also there's always some confusion exactly what do we do and what do the county and how do we intersect? So I just want to graphically go through that real briefly.
That would be great.
Then we can take questions.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
There we go.
Okay. So as we saw about an hour ago, this is the spaceship, and you were introduced to some of the patrons who reside in that spaceship downstairs. But this is the roles and responsibility for the city and the county. The city reviews the horizontal, and that was all the folks we met downstairs. That's our grading folks, drainage, erosion control, stormwater. That was Brendan Smith. Our streets, that was Travis Miller, CDOT, traffic control, driveway permits, tree ordinance, both residential and commercial. Our subdivision planning, Josh Weaver introduced that to you, and Patrick Turner talked about the water and sewer and donated projects. Also, you noticed that City Fire was down there, so we had a brief introduction to what they do. This is a real big step because City Fire is very integral to the horizontal approval and getting them into conversations. We're starting to make great strides into that. So look for good things on the horizon when it comes to partnering with City Fire and the approval of the horizontal and the whole integration with the UDO. Our friends over at the county, they look at the vertical. They look at the state building code, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, structural. And I think you all know that the building code is changing in a few weeks. January 1st, there'll be a new building code. We have commercial zoning there. Even though this is part of the city review, all of our residential zoning and commercial zoning, they're wearing two hats at this point in time. They look at it in the city's Excella, then they look at it over the county just to make sure more or less a quality control check. The state fire code and water and sewer connections, your backflow is all reviewed over at the county. Because a lot of people just say permitting, and when they come to us, we have to say, okay, exactly what are you looking at? We will help them if they're having an issue with the plumbing, mechanical or electrical and vice versa. But again, it is two separate phases and they're two separate submittals. And now we have City Excella for about 15 years and the county is just implementing it in January. So now we're gonna have two Excellas and the elephant in the room, they do not talk to each other. We have tried and tried and tried, and we're still think we're on the course to get that communication started. So it's easier for the customer. They don't have to understand which Excella they're in, and actually easier for our staff, both staffs. So I know this is a lot going on here, but this is a graphic representation. And if anybody wants to see this or have this for whatever reason, just let me know. But it basically is showing you that the customer, they come in and they upload their plans, they fill out their application on Excella Citizen Access, which is our database. And it's also our plan review tool that we use and our repository for any approved plans. So they come in and our plan review coordinators look at the project, make sure everything is great and in order. With the UDO, we did a complete revamp of some of our applications. We hadn't looked at those in probably 15 years, and anything, you can use technology to make it more powerful. Now we have what we call a gateway for applications. So this is when our review team from CDOT, Urban Forestry, the whole spectrum we met down there, actually will look at the plan to determine if they have to review it. And they have everything in that package to review. If they say yes, then the fees are automatically assessed. And then the fees are paid. And then it'll come down to what we call parallel reviews, which I think you can see here. This is all the review agencies are reviewing at the same time. They have 15 business days for commercial or an LDCP, our land development construction plans. For our residential, they have 7 business days. So after they review their cycle, it either says approved, which we don't really see on the first time, quite honestly, or revisions. When it goes to revisions, then it goes all the way back up here to the customer. They have resubmit within 6 months. They resubmit and it goes through this process again. It'll go through it numerous times until the plans are actually approved. Then they're approved, the customer knows. They can be running concurrently. I should have said this path is Mecklenburg County. They can be running concurrently. Mecklenburg County does place our holds on the building permit. So once we approved, our team goes in and has to release the holds for city engineering, which is stormwater, urban forestry, and zoning. So once those holds are released, the permit is issued, magic is done in the field, the building is constructed. I think you met David Edwards, who said that they have pre-construction meetings. Both the county and the city have separate pre-construction meetings on site to tell the development team what our expectations are and their roles and responsibilities. Then we have our site inspections. And then again, that would be urban forestry, stormwater and erosion control, and zoning. And when those are met, the holds are released, you have your final inspection, and then the CO is released. I know there was talk of a TCO that state law passed a few years ago that as long as the building code regulations are met, a TCO can be issued. But our team is on the CON. So sometimes you'll have some places where folks are in a building, but there's still some infrastructure that needs to be completed prior to the issuance of the final CO. I know that's a lot and there's a lot of paths going on here. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Nan. Commissioners, do you have any questions? I'm going to go with Commissioner Shaw and then Commissioner Russell.
Thanks, Nan. That's very, very helpful. This is a very elementary question, but I'm just curious. The county and city division of labor in terms of vertical versus horizontal, is that just best practice across the country? Is it different depending on what municipality you're in?
Every municipality is different. You'll have some municipalities where if you want to get your roads, you submit one application. If you want to do your trees, you submit another. So we're unique in that we try to combine everything in one unified review. A lot of municipalities, I say, are blessed because they all have that all under one bubble, both the horizontal and the vertical. You do see some splits like that. So it's across the board, but I would say the majority of folks they're all under one jurisdiction, or at least the jurisdictions work together for a seamless approach.
You good? We've got Commissioner Russell and then I'll come back to you. Commissioner Russell?
Hi, Nan. Thank you for coming out today. I have two questions, if you don't mind. So first question is, the NC General Assembly just recently passed a law that is restricting the amount of time that review agencies have to review. I think it's 15 days, or they have to refund a portion of the review fees, and that goes into effect at sometime in January. So how is that being reflected in your review process?
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, that's residential.
Yes.
And our whole residential process is 10 business days, and we do track the due dates. There's some discrepancy what's meant by initial review. If that's our gateway, that's in 3 days, then fees are paid, then the actual detailed review is 7. But we feel very confident that we'll be able to, well, we have been meeting those days.
Okay. And then the second question is, I know with the changes in the UDO, essentially every project that comes through Acela is triggering stormwater review and urban forestry, even if it's in addition to your house or something that has nothing to do with new construction.
Correct.
How is that going to be addressed going forward?
Well, when we implemented the UDO on June 1st of 2023, prior to that, we worked with a consultant who helped us with our process improvements, and we incorporated or invented a new application for the residential folks, because that was not our audience. We dealt more with civil engineers, the horizontal. So we have this new application type called the Land Development Individual Residential Lot, LDIRL. And that is the 3-day gateway with the 7 days. And when those come in, they go to urban forestry, stormwater, and now residential zoning, who determine whether or not they need to review that particular application. You're welcome.
Commissioner Neely?
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation and the tour today. My question is about costs. So we know this isn't free. At what point does the public have a good idea of what it is they're asking for, what it is that they're trying to do, what those costs are, and what the fees are associated with that?
Sure.
And you've mentioned that once the fees are paid, how does that work from the public perspective?
Of course. We are part of the budget process. So this is actually budget season now. So we begin what we call our user fee methodology in an exercise. So all those departments you saw downstairs and other ones, we base our fees based on occurrences and time allotment. So this is a yearly exercise that we do. And that's why you'll see every July 1st, some fees will go up, some will go down, dependent upon the occurrences and staff time allocated to that user fee on a yearly basis. So that is in the budget book. We do a heavy lift July 1st to make sure we have our schedules out there. All of our fees changes are in our system. So comes July 1st, it would be automatic. Right now we do an automatic assessment of fees, which is wonderful. And then once the fees are assessed, an email is sent to the contacts who is associated with the particular application, saying what the fees are and the methodology to pay. We have online payment, we have e-check, and then we also have the hard copy check people can bring by.
Commissioner Sealy, and then Commissioner Lancel.
I like to think myself as one of the more plugged in people in this room as far as speaking with small businesses,
Mhm.
speaking with developers, speaking with architects, speaking with people that are building in this city. You mentioned the process improvement process that you guys were going through. Is that still undergoing? Is that complete?
Continuous.
Okay, because the feedback that I have received, and just to kind of distill it all into one kind of statement, is that we are the hardest municipality in the southeast to permit in, that people are going out of business because the process is taking so long. And that there's unnecessary steps to do simple things like, temporary permits to have an event more than once or twice in a space per year that really inhibits people's ability to actually thrive in this city. So I wanted to just make sure that that process is ongoing and that my statement is in the record, because a lot of people are not happy working in
Absolutely.
the city right now.
Absolutely. When you talk about the temporary permits, that's Mecklenburg County.
Well,
So, I mean, and no one sees, and that's a really critical point because people don't see the difference, nor would I. You just hear permitting. And we do continuous improvements. We have process improvement teams within our teams. We have the IRL, which is new and new to us, and there's some heavy lift we want to do on that. It's like anything new, you roll it out with the best intentions that it's going to work, but we're very honest. Shannon and I have been at this for too many years to know as soon as you roll it out, the first customer who uses it, you're going to say, oh no, we never thought about that. So we're constantly making improvements on that, and we're open to improvements. I know Shannon, we go out and we talk to associations. We understand the frustrations. We're there to help. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we have two separate paths and it gets very, very confusing and knowing what's going on. We are 15 business days for our subdivision, commercial, and I would say we aim to be 90% on time. We're probably low just because the UDO is complicated and we're still learning it, even though we've had it in existence for 18 months. So we're probably averaging now around 85, 84%. And we do 2 cycles, 3 cycles. So a lot of times it's only in our house 45 days. We can't control in between. And that's when a lot of times when we do that analysis, we say, we only had it 3 reviews, 45 days, but some time in between. And the other side, we get a lot of customers now from DC, Virginia, who say you guys are incredibly quick. So
And if I could chime in too, that I've even just recently been to NAIOP and the Home Builders Association and heard, that it's a little slower than it has been in the past, but generally speaking, that Charlotte is actually a better place to work. My request would be that if you are getting that feedback, to have those individuals or those businesses reach out to Shannon and to Nan so that we can understand, where it is, because we're also finding too, like what Nan was saying, is that sometimes it's on the city side, sometimes it's on the county side, and people, need to make sure they're addressing the proper agency with those specifics. So, and then how we can collaborate better across the city and the county. We do meet with county leadership to talk about those areas of interface and making sure we're aligned. But there are some areas that we recognize, particularly with the new regulations for individual lots. Those have been very challenging, and the customer base is very different than the customer base that used to come to the development center. So all that being said, please have those folks reach out to us so we can talk to them.
Yeah, and I do make sure that I give your information, Allison, and also your information as well. But one of the things that's definitely been brought up to me though, and you actually touched on this yourself when you said, oh, that is county anyway, but like code enforcement, if you think about what the charge of the county itself is, social services, parks, why is code enforcement not in the city?
Allison.
We have code enforcement and housing and neighborhood services.
Yeah, okay.
But you're talking about the electrical inspectors. I know, and that's the other thing. Why do we both use code enforcement? Yeah. And that's the other thing that is always, why do we still use code enforcement for both ends? I mean, simple things like that, but do add to the confusion. Yeah, but you're right. The electrical, the building, mechanical, that's all handled over at the county.
Yeah, it is a little challenging having the permitting functions separated into different municipalities. And it's like Nan was saying, it's not a unique unicorn that we are separated, but it's not the normal model.
Right.
So
And one of the, you're talking about process improvements, we're going to be introducing, tomorrow night it goes into production and Wednesday, a new tool, especially for our residential customers. And these are homeowners. Maybe once in a lifetime, they're expanding their kitchen or adding the gazebo or things of that nature. And technology, even though everyone says, oh, everyone uses Amazon, not everybody uses Amazon. So it can be a little overwhelming to use the computer. So we are coming out with a wizard that uses basic English to say, what are you doing? You know, where is your address, to help facilitate the application process, especially for we're hoping our residential folks to make that process better. And anything can always be improved. And we're the first ones to say it, because sometimes we, believe it or not, get frustrated too with our applications and the processes. So we're constantly looking at process improvements and open to suggestions.
Commissioner Lansell?
I want to follow up on Commissioner Neely's question, and you touched on a little bit, Nan. Can you talk a little bit about, just for the record, I understand that the fees are associated with the permit operating costs and they fluctuate each year and you have to report that annually. But can you reference the budget line item for your division and the city and the county budgets, or is it all the city budgets that do that? So would it be under the planning line item in the city budget, and where would it be in the county?
I would have to get back to you on
Yeah.
the county unless Shannon or someone else knows, but each user fee, like each individual one, is in the budget book. And so there'll be, I think the user fees are all in one section.
Yes.
In the budget book, they're not embedded in each individual department. So they're in a different section in the budget book. And so when they come out with a draft, we
Right.
can send,
And-
that to y'all.
And our goal is to be 100% user fee funded. So we are not getting any money. Some areas are getting money from the general fund, but on a whole planning, CDOT, stormwater, anyone in the land development umbrella works under that goal of 100% user fee funded.
Yeah, the rezoning process is the one that's not 100%.
And some of the variances, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, when you don't get a lot of occurrences, but you have to have the staff to maintain the process, that's when the general fund will kick in to help.
The rezoning one came from city council policy probably 10, 15 years ago, that they wanted it to be, I think, 85% cost
Yeah, I
recovery.
think
for
that's what it
rezoning,
was.
So that there's an element of customer service that's a little bit different with the rezoning process than permitting.
I appreciate that. And I just want to kind of, for the record, kind of understand that the majority of that kind of over and above the permitting fee and the revenue neutral scenario comes from the city rather than the county. And that's where I'm trying to see where that falls out. It's very similar to this, to the payment structure for the Air Quality Commission as well and their permitting process. So it's a similar process on the county side, but it feels very city focused and actual where the dollars come from, staffing comes from as well. So thank you.
Anyone else got questions? It's my turn. Although, when you go last, everybody's answered most of your questions for you. I will just reiterate or reaffirm what Commissioner Seeley said. I've had a couple of those conversations and of folks that are like, but permitting is X and such. And those folks have given you all feedback. So I know that is out there and is getting pushed, but I just want to reaffirm that as well. I think on many occasions I've spoke ill of Acela, and it is somewhat challenging to me that you guys have multiple systems. Is there a plan in place to either, and I hate when, and I made software from, this is going to sound weird, almost 50 years. But when people try and put software into this giant mongrel thing where it's a system that does everything, it usually does nothing very well. Are there considerations for different systems for managing the software aspect of this? Or is it just going to be, well, we've got the city system, we've got the county system, and we're going to keep going with this until the end of time? I mean, there may not be an answer to that, but.
I'll get back to you on that. There are some conversations happening.
Okay. Like I said, I will not, the folks at Acela aren't going to give me any stock for my comments. Finally, the last question I'll ask is there a goal for the number of iterations that a a plan goes through, I think you said basically 3 times. Is there a goal that, you know, we're going to reduce that number by 10% by 2025? We're going to reduce it.
Our actual goal is 2.5 times.
Okay.
And that's just because sometimes plats can go through one, you know, if you do an overview of it. One of the things I will say that we have been weak on is our data analytics. And we have made a big push from all the land development teams to work with our data analytics team to actually have more robust numbers to share with everybody. So that's one of our goals for 2025.
Yeah, one of the conversations that came up related to that with a development person last week was, why aren't parcels pre-analyzed so that you could know what you could build on it beforehand, so that when they came to you with the plan, it might help with the process? And given the fact that we know what parcels are empty, we know what the rules are for the UDO, you know, I'm evil. I say, go to ChatGPT and just ask ChatGPT what the hell you can build on this. And it's actually a valid, my son would tell you it's a valid response that you'd get. Would something like that help you all in terms of making sure that the process was done quickly? Because I think you could reduce a cycle by doing stuff like that. Wild hair out of the blue.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I think it's tough because there's so many nuances to a site and every single site is individual. And I mean, there's developers in this room that could probably say this better than I, but I just think it would be hard to have ChatGPT do that. I think what might be more, what we might be able to do, and we are bringing in ArcUrban into our GIS work. And so that's really a great tool for visualization of density and scale and things like that. And maybe it's not exactly addressing like what exactly is going into that building, but at least can kind of help sort of see what the future could potentially look like. But if you get ChatGPT to help figure out all those nuances,
And yeah,
and it's actually giving you really good stuff, then please let's.
I'm not a big fan of ChatGPT, but I am.
Particularly for that.
Yeah, and I just spent a week with my kid who is a big fan of this, and that's fine. And what I know about software and rules-based systems, there's a place that I believe that's a win that may not have been on anybody's radar. I will find a place to put it on my radar, and you and I'll have a conversation about this one offline.
Yeah, and look at ArcUrban because we are, that is a tool. I think we're going to start with the rezoning process, but I think that's a tool that will incorporate some of the UDO standards and at least kind of get some sort of visualization and idea. So.
Okay. All right.
I also like to say too, I think a lot of people think, and we're bad at planning. We just look at the zoning, the planning perspective, but we got like stormwater, fire. I mean, trees alone is, you know, all of a sudden the tree's not there, things of that nature. So I agree with you. I think Excel, believe it or not, is very robust with GIS, and we just have touched how we can use it from application ease and that whatnot. But yeah, it's something that we need to probably take.
I only complain about the user interface, and it's because it makes my eyes bleed. But that's anyway. Commissioner Seeley, who is our Acela expert.
I'm more than happy to like plug in an HDMI cord up there one day and just teach y'all how to use Acela. So,
Okay. Anybody down with that?
like I can even teach you how to use the EPA sites. So like, let me know.
Yes. Commissioner Shaw.
So without disclosing or throwing other municipalities under the bus, I will put in a plug for the city of Charlotte and saying that our our project managers and planning group prefer Charlotte over any other municipality we work with in North Carolina, and find Acela to be transparent and efficient. And I'm sure they would say not perfect, but compared to a lot of other places they've worked in the state where there's a lot less transparency and, you know, set timeframes and accountability surrounding the review, they find Charlotte to be much more efficient. So I want to put it, I know it's a big city. There's a lot going on. There's only so much that, you know, a software or a group of humans can handle, but, you know, just to put it a little bit in perspective on some of the other experience we've had in the state.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We got any more questions? I would like to thank thank Shannon very much for their time today. I think, commissioners, did we learn some stuff? All right. Again, I wanted everyone, the basic purpose of this is, you know, as the planning commission, we are involved in a certain part of this process. And I wanted folks to get some context of the things that happen outside of what we do. And I think that was very helpful time for us to spend down in the development center. And I'm glad that we were all able to get down there, and we will go on to our next items. And next on our agenda, we've got Neil Burke and a whole bunch of his friends. Going to talk to us about CRTPO. I ran into Neil at the community area planning process live meeting over on the west side. I think there were 4 or 5 of us there, and I said, I know we've had folks from CRTPO come to visit us in the past. We do have Commissioner Lansdale who attends the meetings because he is a strong and robust commissioner. And but what, you know, it's that question of what the hell are you all doing over there? You got letters in your name. Tell us about it. And so Neil's here to give us CRTPO 101 to help everybody get on board with what regional transportation planning is all about. Thanks, Neil. All on you.
Thank you, Chair Wilton. And as you said, happy to be back. It's been several years since we presented to the Planning Commission. And I would assume that there's been a fair bit of turnover since we gave this presentation the last time. But with me this afternoon, I have several colleagues. Well, first of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is Neil Burke. I've been with the city and CRTPO for 10 years. I'm a program manager within the Planning, Design, and Development Department. As many of you may know, Regional Transportation / CRTPO is one of the 6 divisions within the Planning, Design, and Development Department. But also with me this afternoon, we have Travis Johnson, Senior Transportation Planner, Will Snyder, Associate Planner, and then we also have our public engagement folks with us this afternoon as well. Judy Dellert, she is a public engagement planner, and then we also have Merritt McCulley. He's the public engagement coordinator, just started with us about a week ago. So again, very happy to be here today. This presentation is really designed to kind of give you an overview of what CRTPO is, how it fits in within the city and the region, and then we'll also touch on some key initiatives and how we're funded and how we fund projects and plans throughout our 3-county area. I've covered a lot of this in my intro, but I'll talk about the overview of what a metropolitan planning organization is and what CRTPO is. I'll introduce our planning products. These are federally required documents that every MPO has to put together. And then I'll hand it over to Travis, and he'll really focus in on the 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which planning's underway for that now, as well as the Transportation Improvement Program. Will Snyder will cover our discretionary grants program and 2 grant awards that we received, over $8 million from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And then I'll close it out with how you all can get involved and remain connected with our organization if you're interested. So an MPO is a federally designated transportation planning agency in any urban area in the United States with a population of greater than 50,000. So any of those urban areas is required to have an MPO. So there's over 400 metropolitan planning organizations throughout the United States. They were first created in 1962 with the passage of the Federal Aid Highway Act that required an urban transportation planning process. And then in the 70s, they were really kind of, there was some additional legislation to really formalize these organizations and give them a charge as to specifically how they're undertaking an urban transportation process as envisioned with that initial legislation in 1962. So in terms of CRTPO, we are the federally designated MPO for the Charlotte urban area. And this is something that's different about us when you compare us to other divisions. So we go way beyond the Charlotte city limits. Our planning area includes Iredell, Mecklenburg, and Union counties, and our funding is contingent upon implementing the federally mandated 3C transportation planning process. And this was outlaid in that 1962 Act. So any of the planning we do has to be continuous. It has to be cooperative, and it has to be comprehensive. So that's what we mean when we say the 3C process. In 2021, we adopted our first strategic plan that gave us our mission and our vision here. I won't read all of these, but I just want you all to be familiar with our mission and vision. And within that strategic plan, there are 6 goals and then 32 strategies. And we've been working since 2021 to implement each of those goals and strategies, working with our member jurisdictions and staff and elected officials from throughout our 3-county planning area. So here's a map of our planning area. Again, 1.5 million residents within Iredell, Mecklenburg, and Union County, over 1,500 square miles. We are the largest of the 19 MPOs in North Carolina by population. And we have 21 cities and towns, as I mentioned, 3 counties. And then the CRTPO board is a board of elected officials, and Terry Lansdale is the planning commission rep for the CRTPO board. And then we also have a technical coordinating committee comprised of staff from around the region, and our director, Allison Craig, and Candace Rory serve on the technical coordinating committee. And I like this graphic on the right-hand side because it really kind of shows CRTPO and MPO's place in the world. And I like to kind of think of our puzzle piece as the conduit between Federal Highway Administration, which they kind of set the policies and laws that directly govern MPOs. But our funding, a lot of our funding for projects comes from NCDOT. So we're really that conduit between our member jurisdictions, those 21 cities and towns, and NCDOT. So any local priorities funnel through CRTPO before we work with NCDOT to develop our transportation improvement program, which is the program of funded projects. This graphic here shows the planning products on the right-hand side, those 9 plans and programs. Every MPO is required to do some of these in certain degrees. But what Travis is going to focus on here in a minute is he's going to talk to you all about the comprehensive transportation plan, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and the Transportation Improvement Program. Those are really the plans and programs that provide local priorities and then take it all the way into the funding process until dirt's turned. And, on the left-hand side here, these are required to ensure that CRTPO's primary responsibilities are met. And really our 2 key charges as an MPO is we coordinate that transportation policy for local government jurisdictions. We kind of roll up all those local priorities into a regional plan for our 3 counties. And then the most important one, the most important responsibility that people are interested in is we allocate the federal transportation dollars that come to the Charlotte urban area. And then also we ensure that those funds are spent in accordance with federal policy. So what I'll do now is I'll turn it over to Travis Johnson, and he'll walk us through those 3 key plans and programs that I touched on in the previous slide.
Thank you, Neil. Hello, everyone. My name is Travis Johnson. I'm here with the CRTPO, and I'm going to walk through these 3 products and kind of explain the primary way in which projects get funded through the CRTPO region. So from the idea stage, this is when communities create their own mobility plans, strategic plans. This is when you adopt intersection improvement plans, identify areas that are necessary improvement. So these are typically projects. So when you come up with an idea for, like, I have a new project, I need something that needs to get fixed. These start at that idea stage. And so typically the projects that go through our funding process start with our member jurisdictions. And so when you identify a project, you adopt a local mobility plan, you've had public engagement, your board has shown support for this, whether you're in Statesville, Union County, or here in the city of Charlotte. And that is where the ideas start from. From that, the projects move through the Comprehensive Transportation Plan, the CTP, to the MTP and the TIP. So the Comprehensive Transportation Plan establishes a long-term vision for our region's transportation network. So this is kind of like a catch-all for the future of if we had endless money or if we needed to fix everything in the future, this is where we put everything together, especially since we have so many member jurisdictions and counties that all have to work together. This way we can make sure that people's plans connect to each other and we know what the neighboring communities are doing. This list is not fiscally constrained, so there's no maximum dollar amount for this project. So when plans get updated, we always ask our member jurisdictions to make sure that this information is up to date. We adopt and amend this as necessary, and then we try to keep this as our primary source for everything we want to do as a region. It emphasizes a multimodal approach, looking at all modes of transportation, and we're currently working with NCDOT to adapt this into CTP 2.0, which will improve it, just kind of clarifies expectations for projects as we move through the process. So once you have the project identified locally, it's been adopted by your board, you've submitted into the CTP. Next, it would move on to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is exciting for this time of year because we're actually working on our 2055 MTP. So there's lots of opportunities to get involved. The purpose of the MTP is to create a fiscally constrained, or it's fiscally constrained and updated every 4 years and considers all modes of transportation. And it's a necessary part of accessing federal funds. And this also sets policies for our transportation improvement. And this is a key process step in order to getting something funded into the transportation improvement program. This is a list of projects that there has to be the estimated revenue available for it to make it into this, and they go through a competitive ranking process. So thinking of this from your local idea to the CTP where all projects can go, this is when we have to then think about, okay, we have a finite amount of resources, where should we put this money, and create a process that aligns with the region's needs and making sure that we will have the money when it becomes available. The Metropolitan Transportation Plan is important because it establishes a vision for our region, identifies needs and deficiencies, and also recommends specific projects and strategies and actions to improve it. So this identifies projects, they get sorted into a project score and horizon year, which means when we expect it to be open to the public. And so it allows us to then align everything for 30 years. And so it gives us estimated for when we think projects will happen. Our current deadline for the 2055 MTPs is to have it adopted by April of 2026. And so we've already put a lot of work into this process by creating goals and objectives and data collection research. Currently in process, we're looking at scenario planning and revenue forecasting for what we should have available. And coming up soon, we should be starting the process for project evaluation, performance-based planning, and everything you see on the screen before you. But as an important part of this that's always going on is public engagement and public involvement in order to make sure we get this document produced on time. For 2025 and 2026, in January through March, our first quarter, we're anticipating the conclusion of scenario planning and starting the project evaluation process. We plan to have public engagement throughout this entire timeline, again, working towards early 2026, getting us to that draft document and then eventually adopted by our board. In order to figure out where we want to identify or put the resources, an important part of that is identify what is going on, what is your community seeing. And so we've created an existing conditions report, which is available on the website at 2055mtp.org. And here you can look at things like growth patterns, transit, active transportation corridors. And this is a good resource if you're just kind of curious, what are we seeing as a region? What information are we using then to decide where to allocate resources and dedicate time to? We're also looking at land use and scenario planning at the MPO. We have limited authority over that, but we like to take into consideration current trends and see where we're going. So we take a look at where we're growing and how we're growing today, and we identify alternative paths of how we could grow. We look at different land uses, different densities. We keep our eye out towards technology changes, autonomous cars, air delivery, just looking at how we could grow and how the region would get together to manage that growth. So scenario planning is an essential part of this so that we can make sure that we allocate those resources to where they need to go. We're getting ready in January to start project submittal. So this will be for the member jurisdictions to start submitting highway projects to our ranking. We're going to open up that process in January of 2025. And so this is really an exciting time because this will be time for projects to be submitted and start a 2-tier evaluation programs. Roadway Project Submitters Workshop is going to follow the January 9th TCC meeting. And it's going to provide an overview for process and walkthrough for project submitters through the project and submittal website. This is primarily for our member jurisdictions because it is the jurisdictions that will then submit these projects. We will have a public comment period on the project list in summer of 2025 as part of this phase, and that'll be phase 2 engagement. So there'll be still opportunities for public engagement as part of this process. So you have a project, it goes from your idea, it goes into the CTP, it gets through the 2-tier ranking process in the MTP. And then from that point is then when it's signed up with a horizon year and estimated revenues. And that's when it moves into the transportation improvement program. So the transportation improvement program is also aligns with the state transportation improvement program. And that sets up a 10-year time frame for projects to be funded. It is set by STI law, which is the Strategic Transportation Investment Law that was set by North Carolina in 2013. And that defines funding categories, project types, and project guidelines of what can be submitted, how much money is set aside for, or how much is set aside for certain kinds of projects. And what are the steps in order to submit them. So when the project gets added to the TIP or the STIP, the first 5 years is seen as the delivery steps. That's typically these projects will happen within this time frame. Typically, and the funding is there and the anticipated revenue. And then the final 5 years is seen as the developmental TIP, which means it'll be re-ranked as the process moves forward. This is a process that happens every 2 years typically. But these are fiscally constrained more so than the 2055 MTP, because then it's looking at more realistic numbers for how much funding is available. CRTPO adopts the TIP in coordination with NCDOT. We have to do it every 4 years, but we typically do it every 2 years. And again, it's developed in accordance with the Strategic Transportation Investment Act. And then we coordinate with the development of the STIP and TIP. In order to create this list, though, we do this through a process called prioritization. So projects are identified from the MTP for highway projects that are then added into the TIP based upon the available slots we have available. So we work with municipalities, or we work within the TIP and the MTP and our municipalities to create that identified project list. That project list, which is a coordination of aviation, rail, bicycle and pedestrian, and then highway projects, are all submitted to NCDOT's spot office for scoring. So we submit it to them. They sort into 3 separate categories, and then they receive a score, which then is sent back to us. So for projects that are in the regional impact or local or division needs tier, we get to influence the overall score through a process called local input point allocation, which is where we get to add points that are seen as a local priority that we want to see move up the ranking by adding extra points to that process. So currently we've been going through that process for prioritization 7.0. So in January, we're anticipating the release of the draft 2026-2035 TIP, which we will then work through the process of adopting here and hopefully process starting in January. If you want to see what's in our current STIP or TIP, you can go to our website. This QR code will send you straight to this interactive map, but it's also available on our website and on NCDOT's website. So our current 2024-2033 state transportation improvement program is for the whole state, and then ours is just the TIP. So if you want to see what projects are currently planned for in your area, if you want to see what is currently planned to be built, in addition to there's maintenance projects that are part of this, all of this is then collected and housed inside the 2024-2033 STIP. So once the prioritization 7.0 process is finished and the draft TIP is adopted, then that will replace this current STIP with that updated project list. So if you're going to get bigger project, these are for funding of highway projects, larger, expensive projects. So if you're not following that process, we also have another way to fund projects. Now I'm going to hand this off to Will Snyder to talk about our discretionary grants program and how that's also available to fund transportation.
Thank you, Travis, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Will Snyder from the CRTPO. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the types of money that are hitting the road a little bit quicker than these longer term processes that Travis just presented on. So this one being the discretionary grants program. So our discretionary funds support projects that improve the community's transportation system. So as Travis mentioned, these are smaller projects, typically from about $1 to $7 million in size. Local match is typically about 20 to 35% that our communities are putting up to complete these projects. They're submitting these to us as the MPO. We're going through a scoring process for the project, and then we're ultimately distributing those funds. And this pot of money kind of flexes year to year, but on average, we see about $30 million annually that we're allocating. And it's coming from these different funding sources on the right-hand side. The most common being the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. That is the pot of money that we're receiving from the federal government to then, again, distribute through our process to our local communities. Similar to some of the other programs that we place projects through, there's different categories of projects that you can submit to this program. So anything from a highway project where you're just focusing on a smaller scale corridor, maybe making some intersection improvements, those bike ped enhancements, again, some of those smaller projects, safety enhancements, smaller transit projects, air quality projects, and then transportation planning. So the nice thing about this program is we don't just fund capital programs, we fund local studies as well. So we have regional studies, local studies, cross-jurisdictional studies, you name it, we've probably funded it in the past 10 or so years through this program. The two studies that we were recently awarded federal funds for, these are, I guess, extracurricular, if you'd like to call them that we typically don't perform studies like this, but thanks to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we were awarded a little over $8 million to conduct two types of studies. The first one is called SAFER. This is a study funded through the RAISE grant program. And so RAISE stands for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. Basically, in some targeted geographies throughout our planning area, you can see this map on the left. What's colored in yellow, green, and then that kind of dotted pattern. Those are disadvantaged community areas throughout our planning area where there's concentrations of communities that have been left behind to some degree in the infrastructure that has been planned for them. So whether that's road quality deteriorating, access to jobs, kind of a lot of the ancillary factors that relate to how a person is able to travel and how the transportation system provides them that access today. So we've identified these areas and we received $5 million to study those prevailing transportation problems there on a number of different fronts. And I'll kind of toggle to this next slide to show you what that focuses on. So SAFER is a fun little acronym that stands for Safety Improvements, Accessible Design, Flexible Trips, Equitable Planning, and Resilient Communities. So the idea that this is an all-encompassing opportunity to catch up our community areas where they are currently lacking in solid transportation infrastructure. We will be doing a lot of engagement over the next year to 2 years on this project, so certainly stay apprised of this. This definitely is targeting lots of areas throughout Mecklenburg County in addition to Iredell and Union counties. Everything from advisory committees to steering committees to workshops and events. So that kickoff will be in about summer of 2025. We're just finishing up some of the federal grant agreement processes right now. The next program that we're doing is called a Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, also funded through the IIJA program. And so this is a $3.15 million study that will be assessing the safety, the transportation safety of our entire network in our entire planning area today. So as we're RAISE is kind of targeting those smaller geographies throughout our planning area, this is the entire planning area. If you drive or walk or bike throughout our Charlotte region, certainly you've probably encountered some unsafe conditions with our transportation infrastructure. I live here and I know it, and you live here and you probably know it. So this is a really important opportunity and one that has not been taken before in Charlotte to really assess how our infrastructure is supporting safety and affecting user behavior, creating conditions such as unsafe driving, unsafe biking or walking. This is the largest safety action plan award in North Carolina, so we're incredibly proud of this award, and we are receiving some financial support from NCDOT to complete it as well. It adopts the safe system approach. So it's this idea that the transportation system should support safety from everything from safer people to vehicles to speeds and the ways that our roadways are designed. Ultimately with the idea that death and serious injuries are unacceptable on our roads. And we have significant basis for this, unfortunately, in North Carolina. Since in this 5-year period here, we've seen about 570,000 injuries and about 8,500 deaths on our roadways. In Mecklenburg County, that materializes to about 17,000 injuries and 117 fatalities resulting from crashes on our roadways here in the county. So we know there's a need for it. If anything, it's an extremely urgent need. Again, any death or serious injury is completely unacceptable under this. So again, we're developing this plan using these strategies. We're going to be delivering recommendations and certain focus area plans for our member jurisdictions and priority project lists to really target those areas that are most unsafe for any road user throughout our planning area. Okay, with that, I'll hand it back to Neil. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Just a couple of brief slides and we'll close up and get questions. But this slide here really just shows how CRTPO is engaged with a lot of the initiatives, both within the city, but throughout the region. We were an active partner with the community area planning workshops this summer and throughout the fall, working, alongside of the planning department, CDOT. We were kind of promoting our 2050 MTP and also getting the word out about the ongoing planning that's going on with the 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. We were a stakeholder, obviously, in the Charlotte Moves mobility plan. We've funded several significant segments of the Carolina Thread Trail. If you drive on the 77 corridor and you're frustrated with it, we do have a plan specifically devoted to 77. That's called Beyond 77. And it's really the long-range plan for the corridor, not only focused on the freeway itself, but the surrounding network and identifying a series of strategies and solutions to implement to really make mobility much better than it is today. We do have a coalition that we've formed that will be focused again on implementing those strategies and solutions. We've undertaken a study called the Seam Trail. This is a trail envisioned to link Statesville to the state line through a series of multi-use trails. It probably will provide some multimodal access to the red line. Knock on wood, hopefully we get that moving forward. And then we're also coordinating efforts between CATS with the 2030 Transit System Corridor Plan. So any of those capital fixed guideway transit lines that CATS in the region are contemplating as part of a potential sales tax referendum, those projects have to go into our Metropolitan Transportation Plan in order for CATS to receive the record of decision. So there's been a high degree of coordination with CATS staff to ensure that we're not only doing what we're supposed to with the 2055 MTP, but we're coordinated in the work that CATS is doing to update its transit corridor system plan. And then lastly, Connect Beyond, that's the region's mobility initiative with a heavy focus on transit and land use coordination. So we served in the project management role in the development of that plan, but also as in the implementation of that plan as well. And Central Line Regional Council is the lead on that, but there's heavy involvement from the city and the county. This is our contact information here. And then lastly, I mentioned the Technical Coordinating Committee meetings and the CRTPO Policy Board. So the Technical Coordinating Committee meets the first Thursday of each month at 10 a.m. The CRTPO Policy Board meets the third Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. Both of those you can attend in person or you can watch on the CRTPO's Facebook page. And we have canceled our meetings for December, but our first TCC meeting will be Thursday, January 9th, and our first CRTPO board meeting will be Wednesday, January 15th. So with that, thanks again for having us, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Thanks very much, Neil. Got a question from Commissioner Russell and Commissioner Wilden will follow.
Thank you for presentation. Very good. So I have one random question and one legitimate question. I'll start with the random question. So going back and looking at the map of CRTPO, you got all of Iredell County, all of Mecklenburg County, and only part of Union County. Is there any rationale behind carving off part of Union County?
That's a great question. And
be kind in your response.
So the planning area boundaries are determined by whatever the census defines as the urban area. And that's really a starting point. Then there's a bit of negotiation with our neighboring planning agencies. So the Charlotte urban area extends all the way down to Marshville in Union County, but then it doesn't form the entirety of Union County. And the parts eastern, far eastern, and southeastern Union County are actually included within the Rocky River Rural Planning Organization. So we do have a high degree of coordination with the Rocky River Rural Planning Organization, as well as the adjacent MPOs in Cabarrus, Rowan, as well as Gaston, Cleveland, Lincoln. So that's the answer to that. And initially with Iredell County, we only went up to the South Fork of the Yadkin River, and then they were in an RPO as well. But their staff and elected officials felt like it just made sense to include the entire county within our planning organization. So we did work with NCDOT and Federal Highway to amend our planning area. I think that was back in 2015.
Okay. Thank you. That makes total sense. Thank you for answering that question. Second question, looking at a city like Charlotte that's growing rapidly, and you've got those 3 tiers of lists for projects. And so you would make a plan for some kind of transportation improvement, and let's just say you did that in 2000 and you never got funded and it never got built. Now, 20 years later, the need and the technology has changed, but you still have this project on the books. So does that is there some kind of process to reevaluate old projects that are still on the books but are unfunded, or old projects that don't get built because there's just not enough funding for it?
Yeah, and that's the beauty in updating our metropolitan transportation plan every 4 years. So that alone requires us to kind of completely reevaluate the batch of projects again. However, it's incumbent upon each member jurisdiction to let us know what their priorities locally are, and then we run them through that two-tiered project submission process. So usually, say if it's been 10 years and a project hasn't gotten funded, what we'll do is we'll work with NCDOT and the member jurisdiction to say, maybe we adjust the project limits, or maybe we revisit the scope to value engineer it to make it more cost effective. So our staff works with the jurisdiction to try to figure out how can we get this done given limited resources.
Commissioner Wilden.
Yeah, thank you for this. That was a lot covered. So I have two questions. So when do you think you'll be done with the full grant process so that then the federal government can literally just write you a check? Just because I know that there are rumors about lots of money not being allocated to the IIJA starting January 21st.
I'm going to attempt to answer that question, but I may rely on Will to help me because he's really been the direct conduit with Federal Highway Administration on this. We are in the grant agreement writing process right now. We envision that to be completed hopefully by late spring, early summer. The RAISE grant, that's a lot more involved. That's the $5 million grant. We anticipate probably 1 to 2 years planning for that. The SS4A, it's a little more formulaic, and there's some opportunities to customize the scope, but by and large, you kind of follow a cookbook approach with that. So we would envision maybe up to a year with that. But we're very aware with the changing administration and how FHWA doesn't want MPOs or anyone to sit on funds without them being authorized or used. So, we have an adequate staffing levels to really deliver this. And we're kind of in that scope writing phase for both of them right now. But we really do intend to make that a big priority for the organization over the next few years to get that planning work done. And then hopefully there's still dollars to go out and actually implement a lot of the key recommendations.
Awesome. And then are there any thoughts on DOT district realignment that y'all have?
And you're talking about the 14 NCDOT divisions.
Yes.
And I know this anecdotally, but those divisions were determined, years ago based upon where the state owned land. And a lot of times they used, I think, prisoner labor to actually build and maintain the roads. I think that is a function of the General Assembly to make that determination to move the divisions or realign the divisions. But, we're in 2 divisions. We're Iredell County's in 12, Mecklenburg and Union is in 10, and their offices, Division 10 does have a presence in Charlotte, but their main office is Albemarle, and 12's main office is Shelby. So it would be nice to have everything kind of centrally located in Charlotte, but I realize that's a function of the General Assembly, and I don't think we have a whole lot of influence in that, but there could be some enabling legislation that would look at that. I know it's been a topic in the 15 years I've been doing this, that's come up every now and then.
Neil, you can tell them that I said you want it that way and everything will be fine.
Okay.
Commissioner Caprioli.
Thank you. I didn't see anything in there. Do you also study the impact of the vehicle traffic from South Carolina into Charlotte?
That's covered within the Metroliner Regional Travel Demand Model, and that's a model that is housed within the Charlotte Department of Transportation. And what it does is it forecasts projected traffic volumes based upon socioeconomic data and land use patterns. So not only do they do the traffic projections for CRTPO, but they also do those projections for the Rock Hill Fort Mill Area Transportation Study. That's the MPO to the south, but also Gaston Cleveland Lincoln MPO, Cabarrus Rowan, Rocky River RPO. Those are all covered within this travel demand model, and it's all kind of updated at the same time. So we do have projected traffic volumes for any of the movements going between our planning area and RFATs.
Great. Second question. Throughout Mecklenburg County, we have some neighborhoods that were built and either the developers did not build the roadways to CDOT or NCDOT standards, or they were just flatly abandoned. Could those discretionary grant programs help out those communities that have deteriorating roadways?
And we've looked into that issue and we refer to it as orphan road. Sounds like the same, issue
Yeah.
you're bringing up. And unfortunately, a lot of those roads are not, operated or maintained by NCDOT and they're not on the federal aid system. So our discretionary dollars are federal. So we can't do that. However, I have heard with the proposed legislation that, those local funds, if the referendum moves forward, could be used to maintain those orphan roads.
Yeah, that's the 1 cent sales tax.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you. So.
Got any? Yeah. Got any other questions? Commissioner Lansdowne.
Well, a couple of commentary pieces. Neil and staff, thank you very much for being here. In 2013, I think there's no numbers on the slides, but when the STI law was passed, there was a insidious piece to the law that made it illegal for NCDOT to provide the local match for standalone bicycle and pedestrian projects. It seems okay to have NCDOT abandon people not in vehicles, right? If your goal at NCDOT is to, or the General Assembly is to only have a hammer in your toolbox, everything becomes a nail. So we've been really trying to make sure that we build roads for cars and cars only. That 2013 law really does a couple things for Mecklenburg County. Every sidewalk that's missing under an interstate highway or a gap of state road, if that sidewalk wants to be infilled or replaced on a state road, we have to go to our city and municipality for that funding directly. It's unfair to have the law be in such a way that when the majority of our roads in Mecklenburg County, sans the orphan roads, et cetera, are built, designed, and funded by NCDOT and left in substandard for all access opportunity for safe travel and transportation. So I just want to make sure we talk a little bit about that 2013 Strategic Transportation Investment Law in North Carolina and how it affects us locally. And I'm going to look to Allison maybe and Monica on this next piece, but an interesting thing that comes up when my time on the zoning committee is that they get, staff gives council monthly reports, I believe, or quarterly reports on the housing trust fund allocation by developers through the rezoning process. But yet we do not have the same kind of reporting and opportunity for transportation investments associated with transportation improvements promised by developers in the rezoning process. So what this law has done is making it on the backs of developers and the city to provide safe access for all road users. And I just want to kind of spend that time and make sure we share that as for the record from my perspective on how it affects us. And if you can imagine us dealing with this issue in Mecklenburg County, a town like Wilson or Brevard or Hendersonville or Wilmington, just to provide necessary sidewalks on major thoroughfares could completely destroy their municipal budget on state to providing those safe, equitable access on state roads. So if it affects us, we have a little small pain point here. It's a pretty big, and I'm going to use staff's arterial word here, but it's a pretty big cut in their artery when they have to fix the problems of the state process. I'm sorry, Will stepped away, but we're going in and going forward on P 7.0, this new prioritization process, which hope you'll all be involved in the March timeframe for our 2055 plan. But because of the budget shortfalls of NCDOT and allocation of funds for NCDOT, we're looking at projects that were reviewed and approved from P 3.0, P 4.0, 10, 15 years ago that now we're looking at those as an opportunity for funding. So it's a complicated issue, and I'll bet anybody a $2 bill that if they can say what RAISE acronym stands for. Nope. Okay, I keep my $2 bill. I want to say thank you for staff and thank you for letting me put that input into the record today, and I really appreciate CRTPO's work. I know it's very complicated to be in NCDOT divisions, and you don't have enough staff resources and money dedicated directly to you to provide the divisional needs and community desires to make our safe systems approach work here in Mecklenburg County. And I thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions, comments? Then it's my turn. And again, we'll ask my big question about what happens and things do fall out, I guess, when you do your 4-year cycle. We have 3-ish counties in this now. Is there a periodic reevaluation of who should be in the party? And do we, do people protect their turf and say you can't join us or we can't join you? Will it be this way in 2030 or 2040? I guess that's the question.
Great question. And basically it follows the decennial census cycle. So as
Okay.
part of the US Census Bureau's kind of complete deliverable, they identify urban areas. So again, that's the basis for forming MPO's planning areas. So following the 2020 census, we looked at the planning area boundaries and it really didn't change all that much. At least here, they used a different set of criteria, the Census Bureau did, than they did in 2010. So in some places we actually lost urban area, but we still gained population because the center core of our urban area is growing and redeveloping so rapidly. But as part of that process, we look at where we encroach with our the neighboring MPOs and RPO. And we really determined that the planning area boundary, as it was identified following the 2010 census, doesn't need to change. And we are kind of landlocked, in terms of the state line and other MPOs. And, there was a push maybe 9-10 years ago for urban areas like this with multiple MPOs to consolidate. And we did, kind of participate in a series of workshops put on by Federal Highway Administration. And the outcome was, we kind of like things the way we have them here, the 3-county MPO. And I think I got the sentiment from our partners that they didn't necessarily want to be a part of an MPO with Charlotte. I mean, we still have a good collaborative work environment, but there's a sentiment to kind of retain some autonomy in places like Gastonia and Concord. And they also feel like they get a larger share of transportation funding by being independent from CRTPO. So it's been kind of a political and complex issue that comes up every now and then. But at least for the next 10 years, and we just got our MOU fully executed, with that planning area boundary. So it'll probably be sometime early 2030s where we re-examine that again.
Okay, thank you. I mean, because if I were drawing the boundaries, I would not have drawn what you have now.
Yeah.
The reasons you gave are that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And obviously, I guess you can't cross the state line.
There are MPOs that do, but again, I feel like, and I'm speaking for Fort Mill and Rock Hill, I believe that they want kind of their own MPO separate from the Charlotte urbanized area. And when you cross a state line, the allocation of funding, and we also deal with transit funding from FTA, it gets a lot more complicated. And they want to make sure down there that they're getting their share of the pie.
Okay, yeah, because last time we were here, we looked at some population data, and I mean, it's just insane what's happening in northern York County,
Yeah.
and it seems, if I were in charge of everything, right, I'd just draw a map around all the people and just be done. But that's another story. You mentioned others not necessarily wanting to play with us because they may benefit from not being a part of Charlotte. Does everybody play nice within the region? Or are there situations where one municipality says, no, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard of. We're not going to do that.
Well, I'd like to say, just starting within the bounds of our planning area, we have a very collaborative environment, and it's been that way for a very long time. Not to
That's
say
politically correct.
not to say that certain member jurisdictions don't have strong opinions one way or another about certain projects or initiatives. Now, we have very good professional staff relationships with Gaston Cleveland Lincoln MPO, Cabarrus Oran, RFATS, and in fact, we actually host a joint MPO roundtable where we get our boards together and our TCCs together at the start of every year, and we kind of try to coalesce around common priorities. One thing we're working on with Gaston Cleveland Lincoln MPO at this roundtable that's scheduled for February is how do we advance alternative transportation funding? And yes, we do have that proposed referendum, that's being considered in Mecklenburg County, but we also want to expand that and provide a similar opportunity for Iredell and Union, and really kind of explore that jointly before we go to the General Assembly, just Mecklenburg or just CRTPO. I will say that the relationship between Rock Hill, Fort Mill Area Transportation Study and us has fallen off for some reason. Not sure why. We still kind of collaborate on an as needed basis, but I don't know if it's the growth pressures down there or what it is, but that relationship isn't what it was 10 years ago.
Okay, all right, thanks. Thank you very much for this presentation. Do we have any other questions from anyone? Gentlemen, thank you very much. Very informative. We see these things from a small perspective, you know, again, particularly those who are doing zoning, and, you know, somebody just wants an extra curb cut or something of that nature. And to have the bigger perspective of what the region is doing and how those things may affect businesses and things that come into our community is useful for us going forward. And I think everybody got some learning done. All right, bigger brains on this side of the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we just got a couple of other pieces of business to get taken care of here. Yeah, you know, I sent everybody an email, was it yesterday, day before yesterday? If you've got some, I need to do the end of the year little doodah that says this is what the Planning Commission did. So I'm just reminding you to think about that. And when you go home, say, oh, Douglas said, think about that, and send me some information so we can make sure we get that done. We'll do our usual roundtable of just checking in with folks to see what things have happened in the last month. And we will begin with Commissioner Stewart to my right.
Nothing to report this month. Thank you.
Commissioner Lansdale.
Well, the one big event was, as we didn't mention directly, the CRTPO is the only metropolitan planning organization in our state that has to manage, build, and develop mass transit with a rail line and toll roads. So it puts them in a unique situation. And I was able to participate in the discussion around the toll roads for 77 South as part of a subcommittee meeting within the CRTPO this month, and was active and involved in several pieces of legislation that happened in the short session, at the end of the short session, associated with land use and in our Helene Recovery Omnibus bill that just passed. Thank you.
Commissioner McDonald.
Most of this month has been on CATS Red Line in Dorado, just working with the CATS team and the community, just evaluating station locations. And yeah, that's most of my focus this month.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Seeley.
My focus has also been on transit, but it has been on putting together a group to discuss the Silver Line, where its planned routing is right now and where it should be, as well as, you know, looking at the funding mechanisms that have been put in front of us, as well as the allocation of funding from the state. And then next week, invite everybody this week on Saturday, invite everyone to hear from Marjorie Molina. I am moderating a discussion on how to get involved in city government and also how to run for office. That is at the Farr Center at 11 a.m. on Saturday, and Farr Center is at CPCC. And then the next week, I am hosting a walking tour with Adam Rue of South Park Community Partners. He's going to be giving a tour of the Loop that meets at Rhino Market at 11 a.m. as well on Saturday. So I've been doing a lot of different engagements, both in person and just trying to make changes in the city that are equitable and are, you know, giving good opportunity for everybody. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Seeley. People are running for office. When did this happen?
I don't know.
Whatever. Commissioner Neely.
Hi. So I had the opportunity this time to go to the Real Estate Building Industry Coalition's public policy meeting. And it was about the stormwater issues we've been having in Charlotte and South Charlotte in particular. So very interesting, learned a lot at that meeting. Also attended the community area planning meeting for a rainy, cold night in November. It was very well populated. Erin and I had a great time talking to staff, learning about, what was happening in our areas. So.
Commissioner Caprioli.
Just want, thank you, Douglas, for arranging that, tour today. It was very interesting. I've dealt with, a lot of people there in the planning office down in my neighborhood and, for myself and helping out my neighbors. And, it's funny, Shauna should bring up the stormwater stuff. I've learned more about stormwater in the past year from Rusty and Don and Jay Wilson than I ever thought, I would. If you ever want to see how all this stormwater stuff works together, you can come down to our neighborhood. I used to say we have every type of stormwater system in our neighborhood except for a dam. And a couple of months ago, I found a dam that had been forgotten. Yeah.
Commissioner Blumenthal.
Thank you. Most of what I've been spending time on this past month has been kind of working with adjacent municipalities, counties and towns and their planning departments for kind of a variety of reasons, some outside of the planning commission capacity, but in any of those conversations, it's also kind of a, how do you do things? What are you seeing? How can we continue to be a resource to you and vice versa? So that's included, everything from Lancaster County, the town of Midland, Gaston County, their EDC specifically, we do a lot of work with. So had several of those meetings and it's been really interesting to see how things spill out from Charlotte and Mecklenburg County and how they address a lot of that. Two things that I missed, and I would love to talk to somebody who made them. One was the CAP discussion at the Innovation Barn that I wasn't able to go to, and the other was the state of housing that I wasn't able to go to.
We will cover both of those shortly.
Perfect. Yeah, I just wasn't able to make those. And
Because you were in another country, weren't you?
it's hard to keep tracking down. That's it for me though.
Thank you very much.
you.
Good for you to be here at this meeting with us in our country. Commissioner Shaw.
As Commissioner Neely said, we attended the Community Area Planning South event, which was great, and yes, very well attended for what it was. Got to speak with and hear from a couple of community members as well on some of our rezoning decisions, which was great and enlightening. Attended and spoke on a panel for ULI last week related to the national meeting and just trends and things we had seen from the national meeting, a bunch along with a group of residential developers, multifamily and single family homes, which was enlightening on all sides.
Thank you. Commissioner Mellon.
It's been a slow time for me. I attended virtually the State of the Housing 2024 Summit, and I'm going to see Clayton Friday night, I think it is, Silver Line.
Is this
discussion.
something we should know about?
I'm on the east side, so
Okay.
Silver Line's very, very important to the east side. And of course I go to the city council meeting. So like I said, it's been a slow month for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Russell.
Thank you, Chair. Quite a bit going on. So I've got a couple of rezoning petitions that are hot and heavy in my area. And I do want to brag on planning staff a little bit. I've been sending folks your way to deal with some questions and issues about things not working and not loading, and planning staff's been all over it. So thank you guys for being responsive to the community. Because of the number of rezoners that we have in my area, we are going to schedule, my association is scheduling a meeting with CDOT to talk about the road infrastructure and how it works with the pedestrian oriented development that we've seen thus far. I was also lucky enough to attend the State of Housing a few weeks ago. And then last week I was on last week I was on a panel for Sustain Charlotte to talk about affordable housing and development in the area. So I think that that was really well attended and a good opportunity. So looking forward to a less busy 2025, hopefully.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Russell. I will pull up the tail end. Sean and I went to the Charlotte Water presentation. excellent presentation. And again, when we think about the things that we do within the realm of the Planning Commission, if after we've done these things, the developers cannot go to the next step because of some external event, what have we all accomplished? And that was very interesting for us to see that. Community area planning, there were, let's see, Aaron, Shauna, me. Did we all more or less catch one of those last month? South Park stakeholders meeting, I was there. They launched their free rideshare service. State of the housing. I sat next to Teresa. Will, were you there? I didn't see you. State of housing, UNCC State of Housing. Oh, okay. Well, Carolyn said I had a hat on and that I was incredibly good looking. That's all I know about that. I did go to the CAP meeting, which was over at the Innovation Barn. It was very well attended. I think that they probably had 30, 40, maybe 50 people there for that event. And there were cameras there. So I'm wondering if that event is on video somewhere. I'm not sure. Yeah. Anyway, had a couple of meetings with developers, got some feedback. And last month we had a visitor and I got to talk to that visitor. We went and had coffee and it was very nice to have someone come to our meetings uninvited, have an interest in the things that we were doing and express that in a very direct fashion and an intelligent fashion. And I'm always trolling for next planning commissioners. So I think there might be somebody good out there in terms of that adventure. So that's about that. We got homework for next time. And do we have our homework slides? We do not have homework slides? I had sent, okay, I sent homework slides this morning. So I got a thank you back. So I assumed that they had gotten to the place. Elle is shaking her head. So obviously. Are we about to have a breakthrough moment? All right, slides. Yeah, we need the Jeopardy music. All right, yay. Next slide. Here we see the cast of Wicked as they are. Is this not the cast of Wicked? Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Next slide then. For those of you who didn't go to the State of Housing, here's the report. And I will send this slide, this PDF to you guys, and you can obviously find this yourselves. But I will say that it was same song, different year a lot with what Dr. Chu had to say. There's still a disconnect between supply and demand. And that is going to, as I like to say, as long as there are 10 people buying houses and only 9 houses, things are going to go up. So that's one of the things. Here's our next slide. And I have been infatuated with these things that I call the stacked triplex that the people in Boston call a 3-decker. And you can, okay, whatever. Everybody has their own name? Well, you know what? Look at these hideous things that no one would want in their weird, because this is awful and is not a single family home. So when we have meetings, I often say, well, you can put a stacked tri in there, right? So I had a meeting with the developer and he expressed a vague interest in possibly checking these out as a development thing to happen here in Charlotte. So Douglas is reaching out to the Boston Civic Design Commission or something, because apparently these have had a rebirth in Boston over the last several years. And this pic I stole, I think, from Bloomberg, but the Boston Society of Architects also has a good amount of information about these things. Next slide, please. And here's some stuff that you guys can read. And it's obviously, you know, it's three deckers and tigers and bears. Oh my. But I think that this is a product type that we need to have in Charlotte and we could build in abundance. And we need to find a place for it. So I encourage you all to check out. For those of you who can't read, I'm sorry, this is not going to be useful to you. Yeah, but those three articles are relatively short, and 10 minutes after you tune in, you'll be able to get through those. And I think, again, this can be useful for us. And so I'm going to keep beating this drum until, you know, I get my way, I think is the phrase that we use. All right, that's about it. Upcoming agenda items. I will just say that for the Planning Commission meeting next month, this may be the way it is, I guess. Monica and I are having some conversations. You got anything you want to add?
When you're done.
Okay. And Planning Committee, we've got mandatory referrals next week. Zoning folks, you guys know, look at the attachment number 9 and you will see our schedule. I think there's adjustments in there for Martin Luther King observance. And Commissioner Shaw, do you have some?
Question, can we get calendar invites for 25 for planning commission meetings? I'm the only one, I don't have them. Like the actual calendar invites.
You talk with the staff. I had asked staff to send out this actual calendar comes to you
Okay.
after executive committee meeting.
I like the meeting invites. If it's Yeah. I
Okay.
like the meeting invites if they can be sent. But I think I have them for zoning, just not for the greater planning commission meetings for 25. Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you.
Except
Yeah.
for August and September.
Okay. Here's our meetings in the future, everyone. Monica, do you have something you would like to add?
Yeah, it's kind of in regard to what you were just saying. But just know that for zoning committee, planning commission, and I'm going to put this under the scope of, there are some things happening in the legislature right now. I know Terry emailed everyone and we replied back with some of the talking points we have going on. We expect to see if the veto is overridden this week with SB 382. But that for everybody who hasn't been paying close attention, that will drastically change what we are allowed to do in zoning, both in text amendment side and in rezoning property side, because those two can effectually be one and the same. So it limits uses, limits density, and nonconformities that new text amendments could potentially have. It's really the nonconformity bucket that's very challenging because it's very hard. That means driveway standards, stormwater standards, tree standards, building height, anything you could imagine you might be creating a nonconformity by. And we have over 300,000 parcels in the city of Charlotte. So obviously that's a huge change. So because of that, you'll see things start to move, get deferred, come off agendas, maybe slow down in timeline. If the veto gets overridden, which we expect is highly likely to happen in the next couple days, then we kind of enter into, and it's 6 months retroactive. So all the text amendments that we passed since June on, we'll have to start examining and kind of thinking through what all those impacts are. So be a little patient with us, especially if you're on zoning committee. If you were expecting to see like all the residential refinement text amendments, we are trying to have a positive outlook that things might change once people kind of realize all the impacts that the legislation might have. But you're just going to see a few things: residential infill overlay districts, neighborhood character overlay districts. A lot of those things are going to slow down because they, in effect, are impacted by this legislation. So you'll just see things change. So some of the things that we're even going to be at hearing or decision this coming Monday will slide. So just be aware of that. If you want to, get involved or have more talking points, I think I emailed everyone the talking points, and I emailed what the North Carolina Planning Association is kind of putting out there.
if you want that fresh so that when you're talking to people, you have information. We're also working to get some, good examples together of the different ways in which that might impact development. So more to come. We're again just we're kind of at the very tip of the iceberg because it happened quickly and, we're still waiting to see if it goes into effect and when it goes into effect. So
Would there be public engagement on the flip side of that when you kind of figure out where the dust is settled? Because I could see a possibility of wanting to just get or the development community could do this as well. Just get together and say, okay, here's how things have changed. And here's here's the new plan, so to speak. And there may not be a need for that, but there may be a need for that, one of those. I just would suggest some public engagement.
yeah, I think it's let's get through like this next week or so and then start to see, we're working closely, obviously, with our lobbying team with the city.
Yeah.
And it is just happening a little quickly. I think we're also trying to understand like what is the likelihood that this sticks for a very long period of time and what components are. And then to your point, then how do we get education? Because it's a huge staff, honestly, it's a very big staff lift. And so we're trying to kind of weigh all the options before going like full bore towards it's permanent.
Yeah, and I have a meeting in a week and a half or so with the other bigger city planning directors in North Carolina, just to kind of sort of strategize at a state level. So.
Okay, all right, that's great. Anyone else got anything? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, we're out of here, people. Stick a fork in us. We're done.